So, could you talk to us a little bit about like what your future plans are for the series? Because I know you want to go kind of beyond books a little bit.
So so we have the books, and let me start with kind of what's out there now.
Okay.
So you have the first book in the first series, which is a very long title. People kind of are, I don't know if they're upset at me because the title's so long. Or, like the booksellers are like, what are you doing? That kind of thing. And so it's the prophecy of the seventh Elizabeth. And then it's the battle between light and dark, book 1. And then it's that whole name again, book 2, which is the way that I really see it in my mind. So some people are like, well, that should be a subtitle or that should just be the series title. But that's really what it is,
Yeah.
and it is that whole thing. And that's what captures every piece of what the books are. So those are the actual names. The third book in that series is called Enoch and should have come out in probably 2018.
No.
Should have come out in probably 2017. Maybe should have come out in 2016.
Is it half done, maybe?
Yeah, and it's about half done. It's one of those things where
it's just going to be a really, really good book.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it started out, and I'm sure other authors have done this as well, where it started out. And you had the full plan for it, and you thought, well, this is going to be maybe a 100,000 word book, something like that. And you got to 100,000 words, and you're like, I'm like a quarter of the way through. So it's such a big book, and this is how God works. And I'm going to keep talking about your question. I'm going to answer your question, but this is how God works with me. I wasn't able to keep going forward in that because it was so big and there was so much to tackle. And it's a really complex book, but absolutely awesome the way the story comes together.
And the timeline plays a really important part in that one.
But exactly. So with the other series coming into play, with the 0 to 10 series, we decided to do prequels to that. And as I started writing the prequels, they were actually blending with the Enoch book.
Yeah.
And they were important pieces of the Enoch puzzle as well, which is just amazing. And I think sometimes God will say, well, you know what? I don't need you to write that piece yet. I still have some more for you to develop over here so you can get that involved with it. And I think that's really, really significant. So the third book in that series, The Prophecy of the Seventh Elizabeth, would be the book Enoch, which is just extraordinary. And it involves Enoch from the Bible, seventh from Adam. And it also involves, dragons, other planets, and really cool things like that. So that's one series. Out of that series comes again the Acts of the Dragons, and currently, which is really special to me in another way, is because Isabella, my youngest daughter, actually helped to write a few of those books. So you'll see her name on those books. She's came up with some of the characters that are in there, which is really cool. So there's currently a lot of Acts of the Dragons books that are sitting there and still ones to be written. So there's a New York collection, which is kind of all the ones that happen in New York City in Elizabeth's age 7. So you kind of got you got to watch out for the timeline. Yeah. You got to figure out what age was Elizabeth at this particular time. So let me see the other things that tie in from the other books for that, And it's kind of cool because it's a story that you may be mentioned in book 2, or characters might be mentioned in book 2, but it's all expanded on in these extra books. And that's really what the Acts of the Dragon is about, to expand on all the other stuff that's inside that book. So then the series after that would be the Agents of Acts. And that book picks up at the end of book 2 at the same time, the same timeline, well, partially the same timeline of Enoch. And so there are things, and they actually go in 2 complete directions. So Elizabeth and them are doing one thing, and the Agents of Acts are solving another problem on Earth, which brings in the Confederation, which is an organization that's fighting part of the Unholy Trinity. And we figure out we're all on the same mission here. They're from another galaxy, but now the Agents of Acts will evolve and become a portion of that series, a different series, which will go into the 0 to 10. 0 to 10 is, I can't even begin to sit there and talk about how awesome I feel 0 to 10 is. When it came to me, just talking about it makes me crack up.
What have you published of that so far that we can talk about here?
So what we published, what we did is we decided instead of just, it's going to be 3 books is what we think.
I don't know.
So what we did is to try to keep it at 3 books. I said, well, there's a lot of characters, and if you like any of my books, you know that there's a lot of characters in my books, and it's fun to keep track of all those and see how they all interact. But since there's a lot of characters here, we needed to write some pre-stories. So there's a lot of short stories that will come out. And so the ones that are currently out, the first one that released was, and we call them origin stories. So they're kind of a mini series of themselves, origin stories. And out of the origin stories, the ones that are come out now is Zeta 6, which I like because I like the story of how this being evolves into and how they became what they are today. And it's really, really well put together. So Zeta 6, an origin story. And then Treya, an origin story. Will come out in December, this month. And then, immediately following that, the third one that will come out there is, Fayeva. And then there are 7 more that'll follow that. And so some of those are good guys and some of those are bad guys, and you're getting to learn those characters before you actually get to the actual book, so you know what their nature is, you know how they act. We don't have to introduce them all inside of the 0 to 10, and we can you're
saving pages.
Yeah, we're saving pages. We can just run with it. So there's a lot of storyline to tell inside of 0 to 10, and we can just run with it and do some really interesting things. But the other thing about the origin stories is there's a lot of cross stories in there. So there's characters like Shia, who extends from Enoch, which is in separate series, and goes across Agents of Axe, and then also ties into all the prequels for 0 to 10, or not all of them, but some of the prequels for 0 to 10, and then it'll be at some point in the 0 to 10 storyline, which is phenomenal. And there's like Yakin, Yakin is another one that'll be inside of.
I'm very excited to hear that one.
Yeah,
I really told.
Yeah, that's gonna be cool. So Yakin, I mean, so the same thing. And so when you're reading those mini stories, it's just like, wow, I'm catching other pieces of this bigger picture, and so you kind of have to understand the whole universe, and it's phenomenal. And I don't know whether there'll be more after that, so we'll see what happens. So so those are the things that are there now. Now to answer your question, which is what's left for the series after this, or what else do we have planned? So we have ebooks and we have paperback books. So the thing that we really want to happen is we're going to start recording for the audio books early next year. So we're kind of putting together a team for that to make that happen. We don't want it to be just an author reading the books.
We want the voices to be different.
We want the voices to be different. We want more of it. It's kind of a lot of it's acted out. We want the sound effects in it. We want music in it. It'll have original scores. So I mean, it's
cool.
So I mean, it's we want it to be more of a production than just here's the author and he read it, and we want somebody to be able to listen to it in their car and and not want to stop driving. That's when you have a good book. So there's that. Ultimately, I would love to see all of the Agents of Axe, the Axe of the Dragons, and also the 0 to 10 miniseries there. I'd like to see those as cartoons. I mean, those would be really outstanding. We're big fans of our entire family is big fans of things like The Last Airbender, the cartoons. Legend of Korra, those types of things.
That type of animation style.
We like that kind of animation style, and we think that this would probably fit into that type of animation style. So
yeah, I could definitely see that. I could definitely, especially see some of the Axe of the Dragons when they're not going to say like the specific events, but I could definitely see a lot of that happening in that kind of animation style.